The controversial truth about Radio Free Europe. Radio Free Europe is an United States government-funded organization that provides news, information, and analysis to countries in Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and the Middle East, where it says free press is either banned or not fully established. It was established in 1949 during the Cold War, with the initial purpose of providing an alternative source of information to the state-run media in the Soviet Union and its satellite states. Radio Free Europe has been a lightning rod for controversy since its founding in 1949. As a US-funded broadcaster operating in regions with restricted press freedom, Radio Free Europe has been both praised as a beacon of democracy and condemned as a tool of American propaganda. Below is a script-like exploration of its controversies, divided into subchapters, with examples, notable figures, and an analysis of its benefits and missteps. The Cold War era. Propaganda or truth, the CIA connection. Radio Free Europe was covertly funded by the CIA until 1972, a fact that fueled accusations of it being a propaganda arm of the US government. Critics argued that Radio Free Europe was less about journalism and more about undermining communist regimes. Cord Meyer, a CIA officer, was instrumental in overseeing RFE's operations during the Cold War. His involvement highlighted the organization's ties to US intelligence. In the 1950s, Radio Free Europe broadcasted anti-communist messages into Eastern Europe, encouraging dissent against Soviet-backed governments. While many listeners saw Radio Free Europe as a source of hope, critics accused it of inciting unrest without providing tangible support. The Hungarian Revolution of 1956. One of the most controversial moments in RFE's history was its role in the Hungarian Revolution. Radio Free Europe broadcasts were accused of giving false hope to Hungarian rebels by suggesting that Western powers might intervene against the Soviet Union. Radio Free Europe aired messages like, "Hold on, help is coming," which some interpreted as a promise of military aid. When no aid arrived, the revolution was brutally crushed, leading to accusations that Radio Free Europe had recklessly encouraged resistance. George Urban, a former Radio Free Europe director, later admitted that the broadcasts during the revolution were ambiguous and may have contributed to the tragedy. Accusations of bias and foreign interference, targeting adversarial regimes. Radio Free Europe has often been accused of focusing disproportionately on governments that are adversarial to the US, such as Russia, Iran, and China, while downplaying issues in US-aligned countries. In the 2000s, RFE's Persian language service, Radio Farda, was criticized by the Iranian government for supporting opposition groups and promoting regime change. Iranian officials labeled it a mouthpiece for American imperialism. Masih Alinejad, an Iranian journalist and activist, has collaborated with Radio Free Europe. While she is celebrated in the West for her advocacy, she is viewed as a traitor by the Iranian regime. Interference in domestic politics. Governments in countries like Russia and Belarus have accused Radio Free Europe of meddling in their internal affairs by supporting opposition movements and promoting anti-government sentiment. In 2021, Russia designated Radio Free Europe as a foreign agent, requiring it to disclose its funding sources and label its content as US-sponsored. This move was seen as an attempt to discredit RFE's reporting. Andrei Sakharov, the Soviet dissident and Nobel Peace Prize winner, praised Radio Free Europe for providing uncensored information to Soviet citizens. However, Soviet authorities condemned Radio Free Europe as a tool of Western subversion. Legal and operational challenges, bans and restrictions. Radio Free Europe has faced significant legal and operational challenges in the countries it serves. Many governments have banned or restricted its activities, accusing it of spreading anti-state propaganda. In 2017, Azerbaijan blocked Radio Free Europe websites after the organization published investigative reports on government corruption. Similarly, Turkmenistan has repeatedly jammed RFE's broadcasts. Khadija Ismailova, an Azerbaijani journalist working for Radio Free Europe, was imprisoned for her investigative reporting on corruption. Her case drew international condemnation and highlighted the risks faced by Radio Free Europe journalists. Harassment of journalists. Radio Free Europe journalists often operate in dangerous environments, facing intimidation, arrests, and violence. In Afghanistan, Radio Free Europe journalists have been targeted by the Taliban. In 2020, 3 Radio Free Europe journalists were killed in separate attacks, underscoring the risks of working in conflict zones. Mohammad Salim Azizi, a Radio Free Europe journalist in Afghanistan, was killed in a bomb blast in 2020. His death highlighted the dangers faced by local journalists working for international broadcasters. Ethical concerns and criticisms. Risk to local journalists. Radio Free Europe relies heavily on local journalists to gather information, but critics argue that it does not always provide adequate protection or support for its staff. In 2018, Radio Free Europe journalist Pavel Sheremet was killed by a car bomb in Ukraine. While the motive remains unclear, his death raised questions about the safety of journalists working for Radio Free Europe in high-risk areas. Exploitation of local talent. Some critics argue that Radio Free Europe exploits local journalists by putting them in harm's way without sufficient safeguards. In Central Asia, Radio Free Europe journalists often face harassment and legal challenges, with little recourse for protection. Critics argue that Radio Free Europe benefits from their work while leaving them vulnerable to retaliation. The benefits of Radio Free Europe: a force for good, promoting press freedom. Despite its controversies, Radio Free Europe has played a crucial role in promoting press freedom and providing uncensored information to millions of people. During the Cold War, Radio Free Europe was a lifeline for Eastern Europeans seeking truthful information. Its broadcasts helped expose the realities of life under communism and inspired dissident movements. Václav Havel, the former president of the Czech Republic and a dissident during the communist era, credited Radio Free Europe with providing critical support to the pro-democracy movement. Supporting democratic values. Radio Free Europe has been a vocal advocate for human rights and democratic values, often shining a light on issues that local media cannot cover. In Belarus, Radio Free Europe. Belarusian service has provided critical coverage of protests against the authoritarian regime of Alexander Lukashenko, giving a voice to opposition activists. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, the Belarusian opposition leader, has praised Radio Free Europe for its role in amplifying the voices of pro-democracy activists. The mischiefs of Radio Free Europe. Unintended consequences, incitement of unrest. Critics argue that RFE's broadcasts have sometimes incited unrest without providing meaningful support to those who rise up. During the 1956 Hungarian Revolution, Radio Free Europe broadcasts were accused of encouraging resistance without considering the consequences. When Soviet forces crushed the uprising, many Hungarians felt betrayed by the West. Radio Free Europe. US government funding has led to perceptions that it is a tool of American foreign policy, undermining its credibility in some regions. In Russia, Radio Free Europe is often dismissed as American propaganda, limiting its impact among certain audiences. Radio Free Europe is a complex organization with a storied history. While it has undeniably played a vital role in promoting press freedom and democratic values, it has also been mired in controversy, accused of bias, interference, and even recklessness. Its benefits, providing uncensored information and supporting dissident movements, are counterbalanced by its missteps, including its historical ties to the CIA and the risks faced by its journalists. Ultimately, Radio Free Europe legacy is a testament to the power and peril of media in the geopolitical arena. Thank you for watching. For more insights into global politics, juicy secrets, personal stories, and military dynamics, please like, subscribe, share, and stay tuned.